Hello everyone, welcome back to today's story. In today's video, we dive into a powerful story about love, sacrifice, and the true meaning of family. James and Diep are facing the toughest challenge of their lives. While their company edges toward bankruptcy, and Diep is expecting a baby, a close relative fiercely objects to them adopting little Nye. Through heated phone calls and cruel threats, this relative pressures them to give Nye up, even going so far as to sabotage James's company. But despite the risks, James and Diep refuse to let fear dictate their lives. Watch until the end of this video to see the decision they make for Nye's future. And don't forget to subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support means the world to us. The faint dawn light slips across the uneven floorboards of the old house. Lytudiep, small but determined, leans against the doorway with her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice is steady, though a quiet urgency lingers beneath each word. She's bargaining with the wood supplier again, trying to confirm the number of boards needed to patch the door that has sagged with age. Yes, the boards will be enough, won't they? She asks, cutting through the chorus of mourning birds. Just yesterday, James had muttered about shortages. Too many projects, too many gaps to fill, and never enough material. Now, with James still asleep after another late night balancing company ledgers, Diep shoulders the responsibility. The supplier, impatient, demands payment today. His tone carries no sympathy, only business. Diep reassures him, her words calm, though her eyes betray the flicker of worry. She pockets the phone, drawing in a deep breath. She glances toward the small room where James lies, unaware of the conversation she manages in the background. In her mind, this is more than fixing a door. It's about holding together a fragile home. Every decision, every small detail matters, especially now. The company edges closer to collapse. James is stretched thinner each day, and Diep herself carries not just the baby in her womb, but also the weight of protecting Nye. Stepping into the morning air, she moves with quiet determination. The faint breeze carries the earthy smell of damp soil, reminding her that life is both fragile and resilient. Inside her chest, a silent vow burns. No matter how heavy the load, she will protect this family. The old door waiting for repair becomes more than wood and nails. It becomes a symbol of her own grit, her refusal to let their lives splinter under pressure. Later that morning, sunlight spills across a wooden table cluttered with papers. Diep sits across from Lynn, James's manager, who has prepared documents for the farm's expansion. Lynn slides a page toward her, his tone measured. Ms. Diep, sign here. Her fingers clutch the pen, but her hand hesitates midair. A confession slips out in a soft, unguarded voice. I never learned. I never went to school. The words hang in the air like stones. For a moment, shame burns in her chest. Yet Lynn's eyes hold no ridicule, only patience. He points gently at the blank line. Just write your name. With trembling determination, Diep presses the pen to paper. Each stroke feels monumental. Her hand clumsy, but her spirit fierce. At last, her name forms, shaky yet unmistakable. Sunlight streams across Lynn's faint, approving smile, washing away her fear of judgment. To her, this isn't just ink. This is a promise. A contract not just for land, but for the life she and James are determined to build for Nye, and for the child soon to arrive. The air feels heavier when she sets the pen down, yet her heart is lighter. She rises, resolve etched deeper into her being, as though signing that paper has unlocked a new strength within her. By late afternoon, James drives Nye back from school. The little girl beams in the back seat, her hands tightly clutching 2 certificates of merit. 2 certificates? Nye's so good, James teases, his voice bursting with pride. Nye laughs, singing a lullaby she learned in class, her clear voice filling the quiet hum of the engine. In the rearview mirror, James watches her sparkling eyes. Warmth floods his chest, but beneath it lies a weight he can't shake. He wants to give her the world, yet the company's future is crumbling in his hands. When they reach home, Grandma waits with gifts: cartons of milk, toys, notebooks, colored pencils. "These are for Nye," she says, her voice overflowing with love. The girl squeals in delight, hugging each item as though they're treasures. Diep stands nearby, watching Nye's happiness with tender eyes, though worry still tugs at her expression. James stays quiet, absorbing the sight as the fading sun paints the room in gold. He swears silently that no matter what threatens them, whether debts, family objections, or company troubles, he will protect Nye's smile. Evening arrives with the crackle of a courtyard fire. Orange flames dance as Diep prepares bamboo shoots, the rhythm of her knife steady against the cutting board. Nye plays with Grandma, laughter ringing like a small bell through the courtyard. But the peace shatters when James's phone buzzes. He answers, and the sharp voice of his relative cuts in without preamble. "I won't accept this adoption. The company's nearly bankrupt, and Diep is pregnant. You need to focus on her, not on some orphan. Listen to me. Send Nye to an orphanage, or I'll make sure your company collapses completely." James freezes, fury flashing in his eyes. He grips the phone tighter, his jaw clenched. "Nye is family," he says slowly, his voice low but burning with conviction. "She's no different from our own child. Don't interfere." Across the courtyard, Diep catches fragments of the call. Her hand pauses mid-slice, worry flickering in her eyes. She steadies herself and resumes chopping, each strike of the knife echoing her determination. Grandma looks at her, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. Neither will allow anyone to tear this family apart. When James finally ends the call, his face is set in stone. He looks at Nye, who is blissfully unaware, twirling with her new toys under Grandma's watchful gaze. The fire crackles louder, as though feeding on the tension in the air. Diep places the plate of bamboo shoots on the table and forces a smile. "Let's eat." And so they sit together, laughter carefully layered over the unease that lingers. The firelight flickers, throwing long shadows against the walls. But inside their small circle, warmth prevails. James and Diep exchange a look across the table, a silent agreement that no threat, no relative's disapproval, and no looming bankruptcy will take Nye from them. This dinner, humble as it is, becomes more than a meal. It's a declaration of defiance, a vow that love will not yield, no matter how rough the road ahead. Night has fallen, and silence cloaks the village, broken only by the soft chirping of crickets. Inside the small house, The lamp glows dimly, casting long shadows across the walls. James sits at the table, his phone clutched tightly in his hand, replaying the earlier conversation with his relative. Each word lingers like a dagger. Send Nye to the orphanage, or the company will fall. His fists clench as he stares at the grain of the wooden table, the weight of choice pressing down on him. Diep notices his silence. She rests a gentle hand on his shoulder, her belly round with new life. "James," she whispers, her voice calm but firm. "Don't let them shake you. Nye belongs with us. She needs us." Her words strike something deep in him. He nods, but his heart is heavy. The company is already drowning in debt, creditors calling daily, contracts slipping through his fingers. Without family support, the collapse feels inevitable. Yet how could he betray Nye, the little girl who clings to him like a father, who calls Diep mom with such innocence? As he sits there, the phone buzzes again. Reluctantly, James answers. His relative's voice is harsher this time, calculated and cold. "James, I've warned you once. If you keep this girl, I'll cut off every supplier tied to the company. Tomorrow, you'll see your factory doors shut. You think you can fight me while your wife is pregnant? Think again." James's voice sharpens. "She's not just this girl. She's my daughter. You can threaten me, but you'll never take her." A bitter laugh crackles through the line. "We'll see." The call ends abruptly, leaving a suffocating silence in its wake. Diep kneels beside him, her hand covering his. "We'll find another way," she says. Her voice trembles, but her determination is unshakable. "Even if the company falls, we still have each other. We still have Nye. Don't let them win by tearing us apart." James lifts his gaze to hers, the fire of resolve igniting once more. He knows the road ahead is treacherous, but Diep's unwavering strength gives him courage. The next morning dawns gray and heavy. James drives to the factory, only to find the gates locked. Workers stand outside, murmuring in confusion, their faces lined with worry, and notice is pinned to the gate. "Operation suspended due to unpaid debts." James rips the paper down, his chest tightening. His relative had moved faster than expected. Back home, Nye waits at the door with her school bag, her smile bright. "Daddy, are we going to school?" she chirps, unaware of the storm. James forces a smile, patting her head. "Of course, Nye. Let's go." Inside, his heart aches. He cannot let her see his despair. At school, Nye wins another small certificate, her laughter ringing like a melody. James watches from the doorway, torn between pride and anguish. For her, he must stand firm. He cannot let threats dictate her fate. Later that evening, as the family gathers for dinner, the phone rings again. This time, the relative speaks with finality. "Last chance, James. Give Nye up tomorrow, or I'll ruin you completely. I'll sell off the company's assets, piece by piece. You'll lose everything." James grips the phone so tightly, his knuckles whiten. His answer is calm, but laced with steel. "Do what you want with the company. I won't give Nye up." The relative scoffs. "You're a fool. Don't come crying when you're ruined." The line goes dead. Silence fills the room. Nye looks up from her bowl, sensing tension, though not understanding it. She whispers, "Daddy, are you angry?" James kneels, pulling her close. "Never at you, my girl. Never." He kisses her forehead, holding her as if shielding her from the world. That night, James and Diep talk for hours. They weigh the costs, the risks, the uncertain future. The company may collapse, creditors may hound them, but giving up Nye is unthinkable. For them, family is not about blood, but about love and choice. Days pass, and true to his word, the relative moves ruthlessly. Suppliers cut ties, contracts vanish, and debts pile higher. The factory slows to a crawl. Workers trickle away, and bankruptcy looms like a shadow. Yet within the small home, laughter still echoes. Nye's joy remains untouched, protected by James and Diep's fierce devotion. One evening, Grandma pulls James aside. Her weathered hands grip his firmly. "Don't waver, son. Money comes and goes, but children, once lost, cannot be replaced. Hold on to Nye. She is yours." Her words strengthen him like steel. He realizes that while the company may crumble, the love within these walls cannot be bought or stolen. In the days that follow, James begins anew. He sells off parts of the failing company, settling debts where he can. He starts planning smaller ventures, determined to rebuild from scratch, this time with honesty and resilience. Each step forward feels slow, but his resolve deepens. Through every hardship, Diep stands by his side, her hand in his, her belly growing with the promise of new life. Nye skips through the yard, her certificates fluttering like banners of hope. Their relative, furious that his threats failed, distances himself, but James no longer cares. He has chosen his path. The company's fate may be uncertain, but his family is not. One night, under the glow of the same courtyard fire, James looks at Nye and Diep, his heart swelling. "They tried to take you from us," he says softly, his voice breaking. "But nothing, no debt, no threat, can break what we've built." Diep smiles, tears glistening in her eyes. Nye giggles, wrapping her arms around both of them. The fire crackles, warm and defiant, as if sealing their vow. They may have lost much, but in truth, they have won more. For in choosing love over fear, they have safeguarded the very thing no one can destroy: their family.